Remember all that buzz about the India-US civil nuclear deal? It feels like ages ago, almost 2 decades, actually.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be blamed for thinking things had fizzled out, but hold on, because something big just happened over at the U.S. Department of Energy, and let me tell you, this has serious implications for India's energy game plan.
Absolutely. And it's not just about those initial broad stroke agreements. This is about the nitty-gritty, the actual tech transfer, specifically small modular reactors, SMRs, headed for Indian private firms.
Okay, so for everyone out there following India's journey towards energy independence and its tech scene, and of course, especially for you UPSC aspirants where all these things intersect, well, this deep dive is for you. We're getting granular on this recent U.S. decision, understanding why it's potentially a game changer for India.
Okay.
And of course, navigating those tricky bits that still need sorting out. We'll mainly be looking at recent reports and analysis, particularly from the Indian Express. So, buckle up. Let's dive deep.
All right, so let's break down this regulatory approval. It's all about the how. The U.S. Department of Energy, they're the ones calling the shots, and they're doing it under a specific piece of U.S. law. 10 CFR 810.
Catchy.
It's not just some random red tape, though. This is a key part of the U.S. Atomic Energy Act way back from 1954. It sets the rules for sending nuclear tech overseas for peaceful use. Got to make sure it doesn't end up in the wrong hands.
No bombs.
Exactly. The DOE using this particular rule, well, it shows just how significant this technology transfer is and the strings attached to it.
Definitely not a casual handoff.
Yeah.
So which Indian companies are in line for this SMR tech?
Okay, so the DOE specifically named 3 big players in the Indian private sector: Holtec Asia. Now, that's the Indian arm of US-based Holtec International. And then there's Tata Consulting Engineers Ltd, or TCE for short, and Larsen and Toubro Ltd. You probably know them as L&T. These guys are major players in Indian engineering and manufacturing, heavy hitters.
And there's also who wasn't on that list. Interesting, right? What's the story there?
Oh, you picked up on that. Good catch. So this initial authorization leaves out some big Indian public sector entities that are, usually deeply involved in nuclear power.
Right.
I'm talking about the Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited, NPCIL. Then there's the National Thermal Power Corporation, NTPC, and even the Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, or AERB. The reason: they need more non-proliferation assurances from the Indian government. You see, these assurances are basically formal promises from India about using nuclear tech responsibly and peacefully.
Play nice, basically.
Pretty much. Often that means sticking to international safety rules. And the fact that these public sector organizations don't have those assurances yet, well, it shows that the U.S. is taking a cautious, measured approach to this whole technology sharing thing.
Carefully makes sense. So what are the conditions and safeguards attached to this approval, at least for these private firms?
Okay, first off, this isn't a forever deal. The approval lasts for 10 years. But there's a catch: a mandatory review every 5 years. That means they're keeping a close eye on things and could change things up depending on how things are going and, if anything changes.
So it's not set it and forget it. Okay, what else?
The big one, they can't just share this tech willy-nilly. The companies that get this SMR technology, they can't turn around and give it to some other Indian entity or any other country without getting the okay from the U.S. government first. Got to get that signed permission slip.
Standard procedure to prevent,
Proliferation,
Yeah.
yeah. And it goes further. This technology is purely for peaceful nuclear stuff, strictly under the watchful eye of the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA. That's like the gold standard for international nuclear cooperation.
Nuclear babysitter.
You could say that. Plus, these Indian companies, they're specifically blocked from getting their hands on uranium enrichment technology or any other sensitive nuclear technology, part of the deal. And of course, absolutely no using it for anything military, like, say, powering warships. Nope. Not happening.
Very specific.
Oh, and there's one more thing. There's a special reporting rule, but it's only for Holtec. They have to send in reports every quarter to the U.S. Department of Energy. These reports, they'll show how the technology transfer is progressing and, prove that they're playing by the rules.
Keeping them honest.
Exactly. And that level of oversight shows just how serious the U.S. is about responsible implementation. They want to make sure everything's above board.
Okay, so we've got the specifics. Now let's zoom out a bit, look at the bigger picture. How does this all tie in with that 2007 Civil Nuclear Agreement. Remember that one?
Yeah. If you think back to the whole India-US nuclear story, this SMR technology transfer, it could be a major step towards breathing new life into the 123 Civil Nuclear Agreement from way back in 2007.
Right, ambitious stuff.
It was. They were aiming for a full-blown partnership in civil nuclear energy, even touching on sensitive areas like fuel enrichment and reprocessing, the whole shebang.
But it didn't quite go to plan, did it?
No, even though it was a diplomatic win, putting it into practice, that was a different story. It hit a ton of roadblocks and delays over the years. This laser focus on SMR tech for private firms, though, it might be a more practical, less politically charged way to get that nuclear cooperation going again, make some real progress.
A more palatable, bite-sized chunk.
That's a good way to put it.
What about the impact on India's nuclear program? They've been mostly focused on a different kind of reactor, haven't they?
They have, and that's what makes this so interesting. India has been all about pressurized heavy water reactors, PHWRs for the most part. But Holtec's small modular reactors, they use pressurized water reactor tech, PWRs, and that's the kind of reactor used all over the world. So this collaboration, it gives India a chance to learn a more globally popular technology. Could lead to better efficiency, maybe even tap into a wider international supply chain down the road.
Keeping up with the Joneses, nuclearly speaking.
Exactly.
And this emphasis on getting the private sector involved right off the bat. Why is that so important?
Well, bringing in private sector giants like Holtec, TCE, and L&T, it could really shake things up in India's nuclear manufacturing scene. Holtec has the know-how, TCE is a master of engineering design, and L&T, they can build anything. Put them together, and you've got a recipe for fast-tracking the production of SMR parts right here in India. Costs could go down, deployment timelines could get shorter, and get this, India could even become a player in the global SMR market.
Wow.
Building these reactors and maybe even exporting them.
That's huge.
It's all part of India's push for self-reliance and, becoming a global manufacturing hub.
All right, let's switch gears to the geopolitics. We know China's been making moves in the SMR field. Where does this India-US collaboration fit into all of that?
Oh, that's a key question. China's going full steam ahead with developing and deploying these small modular reactors, and they're not just thinking about energy. They see it as a way to boost their global influence, especially with developing countries.
SMR diplomacy.
Exactly. So this strengthened India-US partnership in SMR tech, it's kind of a strategic countermove. It's about offering an alternative, a different option to those countries, and maybe balancing out China's growing clout in this high-tech nuclear field. It's about making sure one country doesn't have too much control over the future of nuclear energy.
Keeping balanced.
That's the idea.
Now, what about the impact on trade between the U.S. and India?
Yeah, despite some, protectionist tendencies we've seen before, this tech transfer agreement, it's a good sign.
Yeah.
Shows they're serious about deeper economic and technological ties between the two countries.
It's a yes, we can moment.
I like that. It says that in important areas like nuclear energy, the long-term benefits of working together, they trump short-term protectionist thinking. This could even open doors for more tech sharing and investment in other high-tech fields, too. A real win-win.
Fingers crossed. But let's be real. Big infrastructure projects in India, they don't always go smoothly. What potential bumps in the road we need to watch out for?
You bring up a good point. There's this thing that's been worrying foreign investors in India's nuclear sector for a while, the Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act, passed back in 2010. Some parts of this act, particularly the ones about who's liable if there's a nuclear accident, well, they haven't sat well with international nuclear suppliers.
Understandably so.
If they want to attract the big bucks from overseas to really roll out these SMRs, they might need to smooth those concerns over.
Address those anxieties for sure.
Absolutely. And thinking domestically, are there any laws in India that might need a little tweaking to handle this increased private sector involvement in nuclear power?
Good question.
There's a good chance they might need to update India's Atomic Energy Act, the one from 1962, make the rules a bit clearer and more welcoming for private companies looking to jump into this sector. The current laws, they were mainly designed for a nuclear program run by the government, the public sector.
Right. The landscape has changed.
Modernizing the law would make things a lot easier for private companies wanting to invest.
Streamline things. So what are the next concrete steps we might see from Holtec and its Indian partners?
Well, we can expect to see some serious teamwork between Holtec, TCE, and L&T. TCE's engineering expertise is going to be crucial in tweaking Holtec's SMR designs to fit India's specific needs, and then L&T, they'll be the ones actually building the components. These partnerships, they're the key to taking this approval and turning it into real, on-the-ground projects.
Boots on the ground, so to speak.
Exactly.
Now, what about those public sector giants, NPCIL and NTPC? Any chance they'll get involved later on?
Well, remember, we talked about those missing non-proliferation assurances. That's why they're sidelined for now.
Right.
If the Indian government can satisfy the U.S. on those, then yeah, these major public sector players could very well be part of future phases of this collaboration.
Doors open.
And if India wants to seriously scale up SMR deployment to meet its energy demands, well, getting NPCIL and NTPC on board is a must.
Okay, one last thing. We know Holtec's already set up shop in India. Could this approval lead to them expanding their operations?
Absolutely. They've got a big facility in Dahej, Gujarat, Holtec Asia, that is. If they start churning out SMR components like they're planning, oh yeah, we could see that facility grow significantly. That means more jobs, more investment flowing into the region. This isn't just about energy. It has a real economic ripple effect.
A boost for the local economy. Always good. Now let's bring it back to India's overall energy strategy. Where do small modular reactors fit into the country's vision for a cleaner energy future?
These SMRs, they're becoming a key part of India's move towards cleaner energy. They're smaller, safer than those giant nuclear plants, so they can be set up in more places.
Oh, flexible.
Exactly. SMRs can provide reliable, low-carbon electricity, and that fits perfectly with India's big plans for renewable energy. They can help meet the country's growing energy needs while also cutting down on greenhouse gas emissions. Plus, being a leader in SMR development and deployment, well, it's going to boost India's image on the international nuclear energy stage. They'll be a major player in the future of nuclear power, no doubt.
So, to sum it all up, this U.S. DOE approval, it's a big win for the India-U.S. civil nuclear deal. It opens the door for cutting-edge SMR tech to flow to Indian private firms, which is right in line with India's goals of boosting energy security, modernizing its nuclear capabilities, and becoming a global nuclear energy leader.
Couldn't have said it better myself. But here's the thing. Even though it's a big step forward, there are still some regulatory and legal hurdles to jump over before they can reap the full benefits of this collaboration.
Yeah, those pesky details.
Those nuclear liability issues and potential changes to India's atomic energy laws, those are the things to keep an eye on.
Definitely watch this space. Now, for all of you listening, especially those gearing up for your UPSC exams, think bigger. What does the rise of SMR technology mean for global energy security? How do we balance the need for cleaner energy with, the whole nuclear proliferation thing? Those are the questions we're trying to shed some light on with this deep dive.
Heavy stuff.
It is. It's a dynamic, constantly changing field with big implications for India and the world.
No doubt about it.
If you found this deep dive useful, especially for staying on top of current affairs for your UPSC prep, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel for more in-depth discussions like this, and leave your questions and thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think, and maybe we can even address some of them in future deep dives. And for those who want to dig deeper into the details, we mainly got our info from the Indian Express. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.